Samuel, welcome back. How much of a stalemate is the Iran war in?
Well, it's pretty much a stalemate because it's neither in a state of war nor peace right now going on. And even though you don't see the intensity of the fighting with Israel and the U.S. bombing Iran or any kind of major Iranian retaliations with drones and missiles against the Gulf states, aside from sporadic attacks over the past few weeks in Kuwait and Bahrain and the Houthis targeting eastern province, there's still a state of unease throughout the region. So, and the Hormuz issue is no closer to being resolved. So I think that we're in a very fragile, semi-frozen conflict.
I mean, obviously, journalistically, we talk about Iran, but diplomatically, I guess we also talk about Iran. The truth is here, and one of the problems surely is there are many Irans, aren't there?
Yeah, I think that there basically are. I think that there's a disconnect in some ways between how we see the situation militarily and what's actually happening inside the country. Because of the communications blackout, sometimes it was really hard to know what was going on. But it does seem as if there's an outward display of resilience, especially as the RGC gains more power, possibly at the expense of the supreme leader, but severe economic problems, as your correspondent noted, 88% inflation, 128% food inflation, 1 million job losses at a minimum during the war alone, as well as energy shortages for a country that's so energy rich. So what we're seeing is a situation where Iran is resilient, maybe united temporarily around the leadership, but the core underpinnings that drove the protests towards the end of 2025 and the core socioeconomic problems are getting worse and worse.
Is there a danger that this becomes a forever conflict? No war, no peace?
Well, I think that's definitely where things are headed, unless there is some kind of a major breakthrough. Obviously, Iran has learned the value of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the control that it has, as well as the value of how low-cost, high-impact drones can be used to influence Western behavior and U.S. conduct. And the havoc that was wreaked on the Gulf countries when it came to the damage to the airports and to the transit infrastructure and their image as safe havens certainly was something that the Iranians have learned a lot of lessons from. So that's why I think that we will be seeing tit-for-tat exchanges, as there's really no way for the U.S., Israel, and Iran to really square the circle and come up with something that is workable for all of them.
Our correspondent touched on the economic headlines of the domestic situation. What do those rather grim figures look like if you live in Iran at these times?
Well, I think, as I noted, I mean, severe food price inflation, a severe erosion of purchasing power, a collapsing currency, a hollowing out of the middle class. It's definitely a significant problem. And I think that obviously economics was what drove the 2025 protests. Then it spilled over into political demands. So unless the Iranian government can deal with some of these economic challenges, and it's unclear as sanctions are unlikely to be lifted, and the North-South corridor with Russia, for example, and other big infrastructure projects are not likely to transpire in a major way, I don't know how the Iranians get out of the economic trap. So I think the economic situation is going to continue to get worse and worse long before it gets better.
Samuel, good to see you. Thank you for that. Samuel Ramani, the Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute think tank.